And you talked about it at the beginning of the show, Candi. You put up the list of undrafted free agents, and I think those guys deserve a lot of love too, because a lot of those guys, it wasn't that they weren't good enough. It's just the fact that the crop was so deep this year that a lot of guys didn't get drafted. I want to talk about two guys that you guys brought in, that the Commanders brought in. Jalen Sample, 6'5", monster of a receiver. He's a very slender receiver right now, but he can put on some more muscle. He's listed at 205 right now at 6'5". I think he can go up to 215, 220. He can definitely be a developmental guy. Solid hands, 4.5 speed, explosive type of athlete with prototypical size. At his floor, he'll be a red zone target. That's at his floor. His ceiling, he's going to be a big slot receiver. Think T. Higgins, right? Who T. Higgins has definitely, now made himself an outside receiver, but beginning of his career, he was a big slot receiver. That's what this kid Jalen Sample can be. I see a lot of things and a lot of talent in there. And then I want to talk about Kendall Smith. He's another Illinois product. Played with Devin Witherspoon. Played with one of your draft picks, Jartavius Martin, in that defensive backfield. He's a wide receiver convert. 5 interceptions last year at Illinois. He's more of a box safety than he's going to be like a back end free safety. So that's going to be a guy that can develop and get some playing time and maybe work himself into a starting spot to help alleviate some of that pressure off of Cam Curl. As he matures and learns the position a little bit more, this is going to be a guy that may be looked at as a steal going forward in this draft. And I give you guys like an A- in this draft. I think you guys addressed a lot of needs. We talked about, like I said, at the combine, we talked about some of the guys we thought you guys could draft. None of those guys were drafted by you guys, but but a lot of good picks. This is going to be one of those drafts that they make a 30 for 30 about years from now and say this is a draft that got 4 or 5, 6 starters out of. And I think this is a draft that Ron Rivera and this coaching staff and this front office should be proud of.
I mean, the education, and he knows what he's talking about. And you all know me. I like talking to people that are smart. And so, so he's extremely smart. And I do appreciate you hopping on
to
share all of your great and wonderful knowledge. It's much appreciated. And Cortland, you already know I'm going to ask you to come on again.
Oh, I'm always available anytime. Anytime.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to see you again soon. We're moving right along. We're absolutely moving right along. The next guest is already here. So I want to go ahead and just bring him in. We have 2 more. We absolutely have 2 more, but I'm going to bring this next guest right on in. Can you guess who it is? Well, I'll just go ahead because at this point, y'all are probably like, I have no idea. Hi, David.
Hey, what's up?
Locked On Commanders host David Harrison. You all have seen me on his show just last week. And David and I have been working together since last summer, talking about practice, talking about everything, you name it. David is super duper smart. I like smart people. And so he's smart. And so David, just to give you like a little, because I didn't even tell all of the guests who was going to be on the show, just to be, because that's just me. So Lake has been on, Lou has been on, Donna has been on, and you just heard Cortland Griffin, and now it's you. And I'm not going to tell who the last person is because we kind of switched. And so I'm happy you're here, though. I'm happy you're here. It's okay. But hey, my friend, have you recovered from draft weekend? How you feeling?
I'm feeling okay now. I'm not gonna lie, I did sleep 10 hours, and I usually sleep like 6 to 7 hours a night, but I did. So I got back to my house Sunday afternoon, and then I did some writing. I did Locked On Commanders. I did Locked On Bucks. I went to bed probably about 2:00 in the morning when everything was said and done, and I just turned off my alarm. I said, I usually get up at 7:30. I said, you know what? I need a night of just sleep, and I slept for 10 hours. And obviously I needed it after that weekend, but excited for what's to come.
I'm excited too. This is going to be great. This is going to be really, really good. And I think we're all caught up on rest, hopefully only to probably be sleep deprived going forward. So at any rate, we're going to hop right on into questions. Let me see. Now I've picked out some questions.
Okay.
based on what has come in so far. And so we have this one where I think this is from Lamar Bland. It says, we currently have 4 capable centers: Chase Roulier, Nick Gates, Tyler Larson, Ricky Stromberg. That's either an embarrassment of riches or an overreaction to the injuries we've had there in recent years. Is it safe to say that Roulier is a post-June 1st designation, saving the team $8 million? David, what's your thought?
I mean, I think that's probably that's probably the accurate assessment, right? That I think that's where we're all kind of going with this whole thing is Chase Roulier. You know, look, it's hard to come back from 1 serious injury. It's even harder to come back from 2 serious injuries. And I know recently there were photos going out there. I think you might have been the first person to share them with me. That there were photos of him working out, at the team facility and all those things, and that's great. I mean, Chase has always been a really good part of the team, just from what I can tell. And then last year, getting to know him, the very little that I did get to interact with him before he suffered another injury. It's kind of heartbreaking to see those kinds of things happen, right? But we see this time and time and time again. I think I'm going to show my age a little bit, but I always kind of go back to like Kajana Carter coming out of Penn State, was supposed to be like the next big running back in the National Football League. And the way that I described it is just sometimes our bodies don't agree with our career decisions, and it's unfortunate when that kind of thing happens and you look at a guy and say, what could have been, or what if all this. Now, is this stacking of centers, so to speak, an overreaction to injuries? I don't think it's an overreaction to injuries, because at the end of the day, if you have 3, 4 even capable starting centers on your roster, that is a problem that every NFL team would absolutely love to have. Because at the end of the day, if you end up with 3 or 4 starting centers on your roster, that's trade capital for future moves if you need to in the NFL draft, or getting other players at the trade deadline from another team, or it's future compensatory picks when you develop a guy and you see him get signed away from your team because you're set at the position. So you get a future 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round compensatory draft pick, whatever it turns out to be. I think what the Washington Commanders they have a good mix of experience and potential, right? Ricky Stromberg brings a lot of potential as a potential future starting center. I think right now you have to kind of pencil in Nick Gates as that starting center. He's had experience there. He's played within division. He's seen the Eagles before. He's seen the Cowboys before. Now he's going to see John Allen and Daron Payne a lot more than he has before, and that's only going to make him better. And then Tyler Larson, he's a solid dude, right? He's a guy that when you put him on the field, he's not the best center in the National Football League, but you know what you're going to get from him. There's really not going to be a lot of surprises. He's not going to do something crazy that just derails everything. He's not this loose cannon that not only is going to get limited reps, but then when he's on the field, he might get you 2 15-yard penalties on top of it. So you always want that kind of a guy. And unfortunately it does. It looks like Chase Roulier, if you had to look at that list of 4 guys and say, here's the guy that's on his way out, it's probably Chase.
Yeah, it's kind of looking that way, but that's definitely a question and something that we need to continue to watch for sure as time goes on. Here's another question about an undrafted free agent. Yeah. And I know you know about these way more than that. I was like, okay, David gets this one. Assuming he will be asked to try his hand in receiving punts, is he the only legitimate option the team has at kick return, punt return? Will we see Jahan Dotson take a crack at those duties this year also? And I mean, we know that Coach Bieniemy brought in Marcus Kemp, who did some of that at Kansas City as well. I've always toyed around with the fact that it was kind of like, just put your fastest person back there. But but what do you think, David?
I don't think that Jahan Dotson is going to be a primary plan to be a punt returner or a kick returner anytime soon. Like, he'll continue getting reps. I think Candi in training camp, we'll see him going back there and fielding just like he was last year. But I think that's going to be an emergency plan. That's if 2 or 3 guys go down and they just don't have a choice, then they put him out there. I don't see that becoming a primary option for them. I still like Antonio Gibson as a kick returner right now. If you look at the roster, I still like AG being that primary guy. Again, Brian Robinson Jr. is supposed to be your primary back. He's kind of the first guy on the field. And I think that's going to continue to be the plan there unless someone really comes in and pushes him out of the way. I think the position you're really looking for is the punt return position, and Dax Milne versus a guy like Kaz Allen. And yeah, Kaz Allen is a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing kind of in real life. Like, I want to see him up close and personal and see what the wheels look like when we're standing on the sideline. So here in a couple of weeks, when we get to see him at the rookie mini camp, he's going to be one of the first guys that I'm looking forward to seeing. Smaller in stature, and look, in a lot of facets of football today, the smaller stature can almost be a problem. But when you're talking about kick returners and punt returners, that small stature guy, that 5'8" guy, can get lost in the weeds really, really quickly. And when you're a defensive player screaming down the sideline, screaming down the field, trying to navigate through all the traffic and the blockers, and your own teammates are in the way, that guy, Kaz Allen, he hits a lane and gets a cut, he could be gone in a heartbeat. So I'm really excited to see what he might be able to do. I'm not going to go as far as to predict that he unseats Dax Milne. But I think, a lot of people are really anxious to see Dax Milne get replaced. And I kind of understand you want the excitement in the return game and special teams. And surely the team would love to have that if they can find it. But there is something to be said about a guy that simply goes out there, waves his arm in the air, and catches the football. If you go back to the Commanders' win against the Green Bay Packers, it's possible that win doesn't happen if their return specialist doesn't fumble punts. Like, he can't catch the ball. Like, just the idea of just standing there and catching the ball to some people is a little bit more difficult. So I wouldn't be so quick necessarily get Dax Milne kicked out of that position. There is something to the fact that he can at least field every punt cleanly. But if you can find that excitement out of a guy like Kaz Allen, you certainly want to get it.
I knew the Kaz Allen question was a David Harrison question. I was like, yes, this can go to David. Yeah. For sure. This is another David Harrison question, I think, as well, because David, you were the one who really gave us the kind of backstory a bit with KJ Henry and Ryan Kerrigan, having coached him at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. And getting some opportunity to interact with KJ there. So what are your thoughts on KJ Henry being more of a rotational piece along the defensive line, or is this a special teams ace? What do you think?
No, he's definitely going to get on the field. Like, KJ Henry is going to get some burn in 2023. You're going to see him on the field. Now, I'm not going to go as far as say like 40%, 45% snaps or anything like that, but like if an injury comes up, I think, is he going to replace James Smith-Williams as kind of as that third defensive end on the field behind Montez Sweat and Chase Young? I don't know that I would go that far right away. Is it possible? Sure, it's absolutely possible. The kid has the talent. He has the potential. You have to believe that Ryan Kerrigan had a voice in them deciding to go ahead and use a draft pick on him again. He got his hands on him for a full week. I mean, we're there in Mobile for 3 days of practices, and then you have the game. But people have to understand, those players come in. I think they're there for a full day, maybe two, before we even get our first crack at seeing them. They have meetings. They go through study. The coaches give them homework, and they come back and kind of see how they do with that homework. And speaking of Coach Kerrigan, when we were in Mobile, we actually got a chance to ask him and say, is it more important to see what you want on the field, or is it more important seeing what you see out of these guys off the field? And he immediately, I think Travell Wharton said the exact same thing. The Commanders' offensive or future, soon to be offensive line coach, now assistant offensive line coach, said the same thing. It's more about seeing, are they on time? Do they come with energy? Are they studious? Do they pay attention in film work? On the practice field, they're receptive to doing the things that these coaches ask them to do. So again, you get a week with this guy. So for KJ Henry to be an upper half of the draft pick for the Washington Commanders, you have to understand that Coach Kerrigan absolutely wanted him and wanted to bring that kid in, and that experience, that familiarity. A lot of times these rookies come in, it's like first day of school, first day on campus type of scenario. But guess what? When KJ Henry steps foot into Ashburn and he sees Coach Kerrigan, boom, he's immediately more comfortable than your average rookie. Now, again, I'm not going to say he's your starting defensive end in 2023 by any means, but I do expect him to be either your first guy off the bench ahead of James Smith-Williams. If not, he's going to be right behind him. I think that's a realistic expectation for KJ Henry as a rookie.
Very, very cool. And David, last question for you before I let you go for this segment, only to just hint that you'll be back when I bring the show back in the fall. But what are some things you're going to be looking for at rookie camp? I know you already mentioned Kaz Allen, but what are some things you're going to be looking for?
Yeah, I really like seeing how the coaches interact with the rookies, right? Because this is really their first opportunity to get their hands on these guys. And then you look at the tryout players and the UDF phase. And it's really kind of interesting dynamic to kind of watch and see, how do they interact with the coaches? How do they take what the coaches tell them? How quickly they adjust? Now, it's a little bit hard to pinpoint sometimes, because you're not going to get widespread changes. You're not going to have a coach come out there, and it's really not wise to say, okay, I saw you one rep in, I'm going to recreate everything that you do as a player. But remember, these guys watch hours and hours and hours of film on these players, and now that they have their draft class, they're busy studying. Like, there's a reason. I don't know how many fans understand this, but the NFL allows teams to operate their rookie mini camps the weekend following the draft, which would be this Friday, Saturday, Sunday coming up, or the following weekend, which is next Friday, Saturday, Sunday coming up. Well, the Commanders, just like a lot of other teams, choose to use that second weekend following the NFL draft. But that doesn't mean that they're going on vacation. Like, Ron Rivera and his staff aren't just going out golfing or hanging out at the pool for the next 2 weeks. They're studying their players or getting a game plan put together and a rubric, really kind of a lesson plan ready for these young guys to come in. And as soon as they come in, for some of these guys, especially these tryout guys, you really only have that weekend to decide whether or not you want to offer this guy a contract, keep him on the roster into OTAs, into training camp, or do we need to find a replacement? So you don't want to throw too much at him, but you do want to see. If I tell this guy, hey man, instead of bouncing off your front foot when you come off the line of scrimmage under this release, I need you to roll off the heels. Does he ever do it? Does he do it after the first time? Does it take 3 times? Those are the kinds of things these coaches, I think, want to look at and see how moldable these young guys are. And that's something that I like to look at as well, because if you see a coach getting a little heated with a UDFA early on, you might not see his name on the list when OTAs come around.
David, I can't wait to do this whole rookie mini camp with you all next week. I hope the weather holds up, because of course that's my main concern. I hope it's not raining, but at any rate, it's more to come. It'll be a great time. Let's hope, like some of the other between Lake and Don and Lou, this is a big year for the team for many different reasons. So we'll be there. Keeping a watch on everything going on. David, thank you so much for hopping on. I appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll be talking about something else this week, but I'll see you next week for sure.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. See y'all. All righty, Commanders fans, we got one more. I wanted to make sure when we do the draft recap, yes, of course, please listen to me and please listen to what I have to say in terms of the players and what is happening, what's going on. But I said, you know what? Let's get my colleagues in on this, because we've been talking all weekend, and let's just talk it through. And I also think it's helpful. Let me know. I think it's helpful for you all as well. I hope so, to get the education, the insight, education, you name it, on the players and just overall what's going on, so we can have those conversations, because we got to keep this thing on. Now, you all, for the next guest, let me just share with you all, this had to be recorded. So funny enough, I was like, well, maybe I should have did that first, because we had to record it earlier because he could not come on. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to play this for you all. Check it out. Hey, you all. So the marathon continues, and I'm here with another one of my amazing Washington Commanders media colleagues, Sam Fortier of the Washington Post. Before we recorded this, I was like, hey Sam, I hope this is painless. I hope this is painless. I hope I'm fun to talk to. Just we're gonna all be normal.
Yeah, and I said there's no pain involved when talking to CWall. I always enjoy chopping it up with you.
All right, well, good. That makes me feel good. So, have you recovered from NFL draft week and weekend? How are you holding up?
I mean, I didn't get up till about 10:30 on Sunday morning, and I'm not one of our colleagues that, I feel like has kids or any of those, crazy obligations. So I slept in. I felt good about that. I'm back in the office today, as you can see. So it's back to it for sure, but I got a little bit of a nice rest after what is a pretty crazy, hectic weekend.
Yeah, it was wild. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go grab a drink. I'm going to go grab a glass of champagne. I saw John Kimes tweet about what you think it's going to be and what it actually is. And so I just passed out when I got home, because I went to the draft party. So I wasn't in Ashburn with you all on Saturday. I was at the draft party, and then I was still like, I can't. I'm going to bed.
I feel like when you hit that 7th round and you're like, oh, like they made their final pick, and you're like, oh, I'm good. But then after the press conference, and then there's 2 press conferences because Senior Director of Player Personnel Eric Stokes goes, as well as Martin and Ron. Then you're like, wait, I got to start grinding on these undrafted free agents, and they're signing. Obviously they announced 12 of them today. So trying to track those down and just using twiddling those thumbs on the phone.
So Sam, let's get into that. The research, the tweeting, just everything, and having to kind of plan out. And we've done, we had a mock draft game that we were trying to play that didn't go all that well, at least in my opinion. But I was like, okay, but mock drafts are so difficult. And then we see in real life why they're so difficult, because you really can't call it sometimes. So what's your overall synopsis of how you think the Commanders did this year on the draft?
Yeah, I think it was a solid class. They targeted a lot of guys similar to how they did last year. They played a lot of college football. They played in the bigger conferences. You saw in the first 3 picks, guys from the SEC or the Big Ten, the best conferences, older guys, multiple years of production. So you know what you're getting. They didn't have any of these high upside, super athletic, 1 year breakouts like they maybe chose with Jamin Davis or Benjamin St. Juste or Antonio Gibson. None of those projects at that same level. A lot of guys who are expected to step in, contribute right away as Ron Rivera fights for his job in 2023.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? It was, going through free agency. We know that a sale is pending. It was like, okay, are they going to make a big splash? Can they make a big splash? So do you think that the Commanders did enough for Ron Rivera to fight for his job in 2023-2024 season?
I mean, when I look back at this whole offseason, go back to the coaching hiring cycle, go back to free agency and the draft, I think that they attacked their greatest weaknesses on offense. New offensive coordinator, new quarterback, remade offensive line. And I think that personally, I could see that being more quantity than quality in terms of the additions that they've made. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see come training camp what this really looks like. On defense, obviously, you were disappointed in Chase Young, so you declined his fifth-year option, hoping to give him motivation. You retained Daron Payne, keeping the defensive line of strength, and then you said, okay, we were 28th in the NFL in turnovers generated last year. We only had 9, so we are going to go out and get a ball-hawking cornerback. And yes, he might be lighter than most of the people in your life at 166 pounds and look much skinnier than an NFL player usually does, but he does the thing that we need to do. And so we are going to go get him and go get another defensive back in the second round. So I think they have attacked those needs. Have they addressed them with players quality enough to make the strides that he'll need to make to keep his job? That remains to be seen.
Were there any surprises for you from free agency, everything that's happened free agency, right? From them signing Daron Payne as soon as the first opportunity they had to who they picked up, to declining Chase Young's fifth-year option, which is now officially official, and who they picked up in this draft class. Any surprises for you?
I think keeping Daron Payne before they did it was a surprise because I didn't think that they would be able to keep all 4, but defensive linemen. But when you do extend him because he had such a great year, it made it likelier that they would decline Chase Young's fifth-year option, and the way you set that up. The way CWall that I've been thinking about this whole offseason is how do they maximize the number of wins in 2023? Because that's the thing that Ron Rivera is going to need to do to have a good audition for this new owner. And so when you think about it through that prism, I think a lot of these line up. And so now the next question is, at the presser after day 3 of the draft, Martin Mayhew said the draft is not a finish line. We are not done. And they said that last year, but they really didn't make that many other moves. The only year that Ron's been here that they've made significant moves after the draft was in 2021 when they picked up Charles Leno, the left tackle, and Bobby McCain, the defensive back. And they only have $2.4 million in cap space right now. So it's like if they are going to make a move, if there aren't, quality players out there, if there are quality players out there, are they going to have the cap space to sign them? So I think that now we could be talking about, do they restructure or release center Chase Roulier? Do they restructure or release cornerback Kendall Fuller? Both of those guys, you would only take on about $3.5 million in dead cap, and you would save $8 million plus for both of those guys. So I think that they've done a lot. I think they could do more. It just is how do things shake out after the draft?
I mean, it's like you said, it's kind of almost, you hate to say you wait and see, and you hate to say it depends, but it kind of but that's where we are. That's what we have to do. So in comparison, the Commanders to the rest of the NFC East, right? Everyone knows what Philly is doing. Philly, I feel like, is making a statement. They're trying to go back to the Super Bowl, over there mad and angry. Like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Where do you think the Commanders kind of fared in their draft against the rest of the division?
That's a good question. And I do think it's funny that the Eagles seem intent on rebuilding the 2021 Georgia defense in the same way that the Commanders were intent for a time on rebuilding the Alabama defense, not just with Daron and John, but also Landon Collins and some others as well. I think the Cowboys had a solid draft. They added pieces, particularly with the Michigan defensive tackle they took in the first round. I totally can see that guy eating up double teams to keep Micah Parsons and their other talented defenders clean to keep them in the backfield. The Giants also made sense to me, but I just think that they are due for some regression considering how good they were in one-score games, considering how much I think the ball bounced their way last year. And that's not to take away from them at all. I just think when you look at some of their statistics, you say, I don't know if a team can maintain this over time. So I think, as you said, the Eagles, I thought had a great draft. Particularly, I think getting the best player in the draft at the 9th pick in Jalen Carter, the Georgia defensive tackle. But I mean, when you stack up, I think everybody, when you look at the first round picks of everybody, with the Giants and the Cowboys and the Eagles, it's all about getting to the quarterback and providing weapons for your quarterback. So that's the prism through which I looked at this, and I think Washington's going to have a stiff competition in the NFC East this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's like the Eagles have clearly made a statement. Okay, fine. All right. But you never know how those things go. And so, yeah, it's going to be stiff. It's not going to be as easy as anybody thinks it is. But it's never easy, right? So I guess it remains to be seen. So now moving forward, Sam, last one for you. What are some of the things you're going to be looking for when we attend rookie minicamp next week? Yeah, that's next week, right? Yeah, next week.
For full transparency, I will not be at rookie minicamp because my sister.
What are you talking about, Sam?
I know. I feel like a heretic for saying it, but my sister been working hard, 5 years of college. She is graduating from the University of Missouri.
Yay!
So thank you very much. I'm very proud of her. So I will not be there. But the things that I am curious about to hear from you all is, how does Emmanuel Forbes look running around? Do they try him in they're not going to do too much, but the thing I'm curious about even beyond that is, what does he look like in press coverage against bigger receivers? Obviously this division has big receivers like AJ Brown being probably the prime example. Just big dudes. And so I want to know how fluid he is. And then I think, with Quan Martin, the second round pick out of Illinois, where do they line him up? I mean, he's a nickel, he's a single high safety. They're going to use that versatility, but where do they see him primarily? And then how does he fit in with Cam Curl and Derek Forrest? I'm curious to see also Braden Daniels, the 4th round pick out of Utah. He profiles as a guard tackle, but at 294, he was one of the lightest offensive linemen in the draft. So can he put on a little bit extra weight, especially if they see him at tackle? I know that tackles can be a little lighter because you're not, fighting in the phone booth like a guard or a center. But do they like him at that size? And I'd particularly be curious to see some reps against KJ Henry, the Clemson defensive end from the 5th round, who I think was a pretty good value pick at that position.
Awesome. Well, Sam, I won't see you. Now I know that at rookie minicamp, but I'll see you at OTAs and the rest of the summer and all that. Listen, thank you so much for answering the call when I said I want some of my friends to come on the show with me, please. And thank you so much for always saying yes whenever I ask. So I appreciate you, and I will talk to you again soon.
Of course. Appreciate you having me, CWall. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, you all. We made it. I told you all it was going to be a marathon. I told you all we were going to get through it all, and we absolutely did. So you all listen. Like I said, May 12th is when it all starts over again with rookie minicamp and then OTAs and veteran minicamp. You all bookmark this show. Keep this show because it's so many gems and nuggets all here. So you want to make sure you don't miss anything. Go to www.cwallse.com and join the email list so that you're up to date with all the content and everything that's going to be going on as we are very closely tracking this very important season for the Washington Commanders. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I'll be talking to you all again soon.